the new bear house, I guess you'd call it. The one they built across the street on the south side of the creek instead of the north side. I think there was probably two reasons behind building. I think there were two reasons for building across the creek. One, that creek always overflowed in the spring. Plus, the old bear house wasn't on Daddy's land. The 8 acres he bought was across the road from where I was raised most of the time. He was just leasing it or renting it or something. There's the back of it. Well, it used to be the north side. It's like the kitchen's kind of open air model now. I guess this was built in the late 40s, early 50s, after I joined the Air Force at least. I joined the Air Force in 1947. I would try videotaping the short history of my life that I planned on presenting at the reunion in 1998. I was born on January the 9th, 1930 in Dermott, Arkansas, which is in Duchesne County, Arkansas. I was the seventh child of 12 born to Austin Jones and Willie Francis Herring Jones. William was the firstborn, February 23rd, 1918, who died young of pneumonia, I believe. James Leroy was next, born February 11, 1919, died May the 13th, 1988. Hattie Louise was the third child, born August 14th, 1920. Minnie Louita was fourth, born April 13th, 1922, died young of burns. Lamar was the fifth child, born April 15th, 1925, died of cancer on March 19th, 1976. Lawrence Edward, the sixth child, was born October 15th, 1927, died of carbon monoxide poisoning on January 13th, 1963. Then there was me, born on January the 9th, 1930, and though I have been through a lot of medical problems in the past 8 or 10 years, I'm still kicking. Aortic aneurysm repair in 1988, and quadruple bypass heart surgery in 1997. Ruby Lois was next, the eighth child, born July 7th, 1932, and she has had her share of medical problems as well. Operated on for colon cancer in 1992, I believe, and apparently has been a complete recovery. Harvey Buster was the ninth child, born September 27, 1934. He's been too busy hunting and fishing to get seriously ill. Maybe I should have been doing more of that. Carson LaRon Sal, the sixth child, was born on August 31st, 1936. He has been bothered with chronic back trouble for the past 18 or 20 years. A couple of back operations helped very little. Frances Lorraine Patsy was the 11th child, born June 26, 1938. She too has had her share of medical problems, having had a bout with breast cancer in 1989. Apparently her operation was a good success and she is doing well. And now for the baby of the family, Martha Ann, the 12th and last child, born November 26, 1940. Something of an outcast with an L in her name. I guess they ran out. She, like Buster, has just been too busy to get sick. Not fishing, raising kids. And now, after that little bit of family history, I will get on with the purpose of this tape, which is to recall some of the events of my life. I'm not certain what age I was, probably 2 or 3, when Daddy moved the family to Duke County, down on Bear House Creek on the old dive place on 80 acres of land. He eventually bought the 80 acres across the road from the old place, hence the reason for building a new bear house south of the creek. The community was called Old Midway, deriving its name from being midway between Monticello and Hamburg, I believe. Daddy managed to eke out a living or existence farming and timber work. Things were lean at times, but I don't recall ever going hungry. Not too much variety of food, but always something to eat. I remember being on relief during the 30s, big stacks of onions, oranges, beans, and whole wheat flour. Daddy worked on the WPA for $1.10 per day. We didn't own any cars beside Model T Fords until about 1939 or 40, when he bought an old yellow 1936 Model International 1.5-ton stake-bodied truck. It's long about this time that he bought 40 acres of pine timber between the Andrews Place and the old Midway School. I was only 11 or 12 years old at this time, but I well remember having cut pulpwood and hauling it to Liddell and loading it in boxcars on the railroad. I suppose my earliest memory was going to Granddaddy Hiram Jones's funeral. I must have been only about 3.5 years old since Granddaddy died in 1933, but I think the reason it sticks in my mind was seeing my daddy cry. He was usually a very unemotional person. Also, I can vaguely remember Grandma Phillips living with us. I thought until recently that she was Daddy's grandma. She was his stepmother and our step-grandma. Granddaddy Jones married his first wife's sister after the first one died. By the way, I haven't been able to find out where the step-grandma was buried. If it was in Centerpoint, you'd think it would have been in the Jones family plot. I seem to remember Mama saying something about her daughters having shown up right after Grandma died, claiming some of her possessions that should have gone to Louise. Maybe she claimed the body as well. All this must have happened in the mid to late 1930s, so I think Louise could recall some of it. She would have been in her mid to late teens, but she says not. One thing I remember from that era was a devastating tornado that hit the Centerpoint community spring of 1939. It literally wiped out a mile-wide path all the way through the community, killing 30-some-odd people, most of whom are buried in Centerpoint Cemetery. You can walk through there, and it isn't hard to spot markers of the same date in April 1939 on them. I attended my first 8 years of school, along with my siblings who were primary school age, as Lamar, Lawrence, Lois, Buster, and maybe CL at the old Midway schoolhouse. The last time I drove down the old Midway Road, which was with Johnny and Martha in June of 1997 after our trip to Hamburg and Mount Olive Cemetery, I was unable to even recognize where the old schoolhouse stood or the Harvey place where the store and post office was either. We did find out what the connection with Mount Olive Cemetery was that brought Aunt Emma and Uncle Floyd back each year for the graveyard working. When CL and I went there, we were looking for tombstone markers of Mama's siblings, so we drew a blank, really blank since his family didn't come out. And it turns out that it's Mama's grandparents, Jonas and Rebecca Herring, and an aunt who are buried there. After I turned high school age, I went to stay with Aunt Clyde at Centerpoint, where I was able to ride the school bus into Drew Central High School, right at Monticello, Arkansas. I quit school about the middle of the 10th grade and then knocked around Monticello for the next couple of years, working at various odd jobs, notably a brick mason contractor named Elijah Bly, for about 6 months. He was really a good guy. I said he could teach me the trade and get me in the bricklayers union in a couple of years. Bricklaying is really a seasonal vocation. And this being the last half of my 16th year, I was ripe for the Air Force recruited the instant I turned 17 years old. So I joined up 3 days later. Went to Camp Robinson in Little Rock for my physical and induction to the Air Force, and then on to the Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas, for my basic training. After completing basic, I was sent to Cusela Field at Biloxi, Mississippi, for A&E Aircraft and Engine School, and then a specialized course on A-26 fighter bomber aircraft. Then on the Chanute Air Force Base in Grand Total, Illinois, for R-2000 Engine School, the engine that was in the A-26. You guessed it, except from afar. For the rest of my career in the Air Force, I never saw another A-26. From Chanute, I was sent to Spokane Air Force Base in Washington State, where I was put to work on B-29s with the R-3300 engines. The highlight of this tour was a 90-day TDY, temporary duty trip to Okinawa by B-29. I remember stopping at the island of Kwajalein on the way over. The island was just barely long enough for a runway, and those B-29s were loaded to the gills, spare engines in the bomb bays, 8 or 10 of us support people, those old heavy tube kits they issued us, and our luggage. So it was kind of nip and tuck for getting back into the air. Sea spray was slapping against the gun blisters as we left the end of the runway and island. It was kind of funny. We took off from Hawaii, flew for about 13 hours, and landed the day before we took off. We crossed the international date line. I guess the highlight of the Okinawa tour was the typhoon that hit while I was there. It really blew, and I saw better than 100 miles per hour registered on the B-29 airspeed indicator while sitting still. They had detailed some of us to pull aircraft guard the first night of the storm. The second night, after the eye had passed over during the day, it was unnecessary to detail anyone, since inside the aircraft was the only dry place on the island. Everyone who would fit inside the planes were in there. After we got back to Spokane, we were asking volunteers to go to Berlin earlier. I had less than a year to go on my first hitch, so I didn't figure they would take me. Boy, did they ever fool me. I was soon on my way to Burtonwood, England, where I spent the remainder of my first hitch, performing 300-hour inspections on the C-54 and C-47 cargo planes, which were stationed in Germany, flying in supplies to West Berlin after the Russians had blockaded it. Highlight of the England tour was when Lamar visited me over there. His ship, the battleship Missouri, docked at Southampton, 250 miles over Burtonwood, where I was stationed. I got a 3-day pass and went to see him, spent the night aboard ship, and then he got shore leave and went back to base with me as he ran to London on the way. In 1950, he re-enlisted the first time and back to Chinook Field for more training on the R-4360 engine this time. Preparation for my assignment at Carswell Air Force Base, Fort Worth, Texas, to work on B-36s. I spent almost 9 years there. Lots of things happened there. I got married on January 6, 1951 to Patsy Joyce Balkan. And the birth of all 3 of our kids occurred there in the Carswell Base Hospital. Michael Wayne on October 20, 1952. Would you believe the hospital bill was only $6 for each sow? What treasures for that price? Michael Wayne on October 20, 1952. Brenda Carroll on March 12, 1955. Charles William on December 18, 1958. In 1959, we were transferred to Columbus Air Force Base in Mississippi. Spent 4 years there and then moved on to Whiteman Air Force Base, Missouri, where we stayed for about 6 years. Then the bad scene. Grand Forks Air Force Base, North Dakota, garden spot of the nation. It's far north at the river zone north into Canada. The Chamber of Commerce in Grand Forks referred to our location as Upper Midwest. Mike graduated high school there, and Brenda got married there. Mike moved on to Utah, where he has been ever since. Now lives in South Georgia, a suburb of Salt Lake City. He married Diana Hardman on September 7, 1979. Has 5 children. Sean Paul, born March 3, 1980. Candace Lee, born October 22, 1981. Ryan McHale, born January 15, 1988. Brittany Ann, born June 16, 1989. And Zachary Quinton, born November 17, 1993. We get to see them often since Diana, Mike's wife, works for Southwest Airlines and has flying privileges for the entire family. We really enjoy the grandkids, especially little ones. Zachary started staying with us 2 or 3 weeks at a time when he was only 3 years old. Brenda has had 3 children, all by her first husband, Ronald Sass. Kids have turned out beautiful. Sunshine Marie, born January 24, 1975. Travis Lee, born October 10, 1976. And Austin Ray, born October 18, 1982. Travis Lee lived with us during his last 3 years of high school. Brenda divorced Ron in 1984, primarily because he wouldn't work to support the family, and remarried in 1985 to William Travis Baker, who's been a godsend to the family. He accepts the children as if they were his own and has taken an active role in their upbringing as well as their support. Brenda now works for Southwest Airlines as well, and guess who gets unlimited standby flying? We've really been jetting around the country of late. I retired from the Air Force with 28 years service, February 88, October 1974, from Little Rock Air Force Base. We spent an additional 3 years in Little Rock waiting for Chuck to finish high school. I attended a trade school there, air conditioning, heating, and did some college work under the GI Bill. Then I ran out of excuses for not taking Pat home and moved back to Fort Worth, Texas in the spring of 1977. There I went to work for an air conditioning company for about 3 years and then started my own air conditioning heating business in 1980. To date, I'm still at it, although at a reduced rate, especially since my heart attack and quadruple bypass surgery in March of '97. I'm slowly coming back, but not quite up to speed yet. I'm getting my strength back, but I guess the chest incision will bother the rest of my life. So they split my ribs in the 1988 aortic aneurysm repair operation is still tender after almost 10 years. We spent 11 years in Hurst, Texas at 612 Plainview before moving to our present location at 107 Beachview Way, Runaway Bay, Texas. We have lakefront property on Lake Bridgeport. In fact, in May of 1990, we were right in the lake. The house was flooded. Not too bad compared to some of our neighbors. Got about 6 inches in the house, but bad enough to tear out sheetrock and drive insulation in the walls. We've been here about 9 years. Guess we'll die here. That was short and sweet, but that just about concludes the highlights of my life, I suppose. Haven't done much.